Welcome, everyone. Apologize for the delay. Having some technical issues, I think, on my end. But glad to be here with Kevin. In all honesty, Kevin, I think most of my audience is probably very familiar with who you are because I think once they heard that I had a channel, most of my subscribers came from conversations I've had on your channel. But for those few individuals who don't know who you are, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, my name is Kevin. I am, I guess, sometimes I go to introduce myself as an ex-Catholic, and I'm like, well, I guess that depends on your definition as ex-Catholic. I am somebody who does not practice Catholicism. I am baptized Catholic. I have not been excommunicated. So am I ex-Catholic? I'm a non-practicing Catholic, at least that much. But I grew up in the traditionalist movement. I was in the traditionalist movement from birth until, I guess, age 22, when I was forced into a marriage. As you can imagine, that left like a pretty bad taste in my mouth. And so my wife and I promptly moved about 700 miles away, started a new life. And I haven't practiced Catholicism since. And that was about 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago now, I guess, at this point. So yeah, that's my story in a nutshell. I guess after having not practiced Catholicism for about 5 years, I created a YouTube channel where I talk, I guess, primarily about like these really weird niche kind of trad related topics. Like I don't talk about Catholicism as a whole lot. I mean, sometimes I do, but not mostly. Mostly I'm talking about like specific Marian apparitions or specific prayers that trads like to say, things like that. So I'm thrilled and honored to be on your show, James. This is conversation number however many for us, but the first time on your channel. So it's an honor to be here.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm glad to have you on, and it's kind of relevant to have you on because you know I wanted to restart my YouTube channel, but I didn't know the direction to go in because you toss your spear in the Catholic apologetics YouTube community, and there's thousands out there. So it's like, what would set my channel apart? And you pointed something out that I know I myself didn't really notice. And then I had a conversation with a couple of with Gary from Catholic Answers, and I forget how to pronounce
Michuda?
Mich. Yes.
Yeah.
Uh, Actually, I had a conversation with him, as well as an individual who, Matthew Mark Esquire, who wrote a book on the Apocrypha, the Deuterocanonical books, and how the Protestant perspective on it and arguments used for the historical Jesus existing is a double-edged sword against them denying the Deuterocanonical books. But it was funny that both of them, especially for Matthew Mark, were very. He came from an atheistic background, but when he decided to put his foot into the apologetics community, it was right to the Protestant brothers and sisters. And you expressed to me there aren't a whole lot of people for people to address concerns that people like myself have. And go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off or anything. But yeah, so I was looking forward to this conversation as like a a platform for me to complain. Not about you, James, but about the lack of people like you. It seems to me like the I might say Catholics and Protestants. What I mean here are YouTube Catholics and YouTube Protestants. So let that kind of disclaimer be out there. But it seems to me like Catholic YouTube is not concerned at all with making people Christian. They're only concerned with making Christians Catholic. And then non-Catholic Christian YouTube, or I should say like, Protestant evangelical YouTube, is interested in making non-Christians Christian. You know what I mean? But to me, so as somebody who was Catholic and is no longer, I don't consider myself a Christian, right? Because I don't practice. There doesn't seem like the Catholics seem to largely have given up on me, which is, maybe it's selfish of me to hope that they haven't given up on me. but it seems like none of the popular Catholic YouTubers, and none of the less popular ones too, are making content for people like me. They're only making content for Protestants for the most part. And that's kind of like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes I'm sitting here and I know a lot of people like me. I know I'm not the
Yeah.
only ex-Catholic in the world, right? I mean,
Yes.
what's that statistic about ex-Catholics? It's like if ex-Catholics were their own religion, they'd be the second largest religion, or something crazy like that. Like in the northeastern United States, it's like a weird statistic, but it doesn't matter. I just feel like that group of people has been forgotten. To some extent, they're the lost sheep, and I don't feel like anybody's coming out to get them, at least until now. And that's why I'm so excited about
Yeah.
the direction of your channel.
Yeah, and I think there is a case to be made that you, even amongst the so-called lost sheep, you're in a subcategory, because a lot of ex-Catholics do end up going to a different Christian denomination. It's not a lot of, I mean, I know it's still a large number, but as far as like the amount that leave the Catholic faith, I would imagine most end up going to one of the other Christian denominations, or even just be like, oh, I believe in Jesus, but I don't believe in religion type individual. But for one to completely denounce, well, I don't know if denounce is the right word, but like step away from religion as a whole, that's definitely a unique spot you're in. I know it's not a small number of people, and even amongst people who aren't ex-Catholic, who just never grew up in a religion anyways, those are still a part of the lost sheep within that category.
Yeah, for sure. And so when I think about the people that I grew up with, not
Mhm.
my family seems to have remained mostly Catholic, mostly, not entirely, but mostly. But when I think about the people who I went to school with, so for your audience, I went to school in the basement of the FSSP church that my grandparents helped to found. So when I say the people I went to school with, I mean other trads. So when I think about those people, the other trads
Yeah.
that I went to school with, so when I think about my graduating 8th grade class, there were 4 of us in my graduating 8th grade class, and I think that me and one other I know are explicitly no longer practicing Catholic. Another one I think is maybe culturally Catholic. Like she will post a Bible verse on her story every now and then,
Mhm.
but like doesn't go to mass and like clearly like doesn't live a very orthodoxly Catholic lifestyle. And I think
Yeah.
one is still Catholic. So, but still, that's 3/4 of us in my graduating 8th
Yeah.
grade class. And I would say probably maybe 50% is average of like the people who graduated from this school. 50% are like me. And I don't know. I feel like that's like a significant amount. Like when I say significant, I don't mean the majority or anything. I just mean
Right.
big enough that we deserve attention. And
Yeah.
I feel like we've been given up on.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. And when you brought the idea, I was like, "Oh my gosh, you're right." And it's one of those things where it's like, I because I'm not a part of, not saying that you're a problem, but because I wasn't a part
Yeah.
of the problem, like I wasn't aware that that problem
Mm.
existed until you pointed it out, and I'm like, and I'm sure that's the case for a lot of the people in the Catholic apologetics community, because a lot of your concerns are going to be coming from philosophical questions, which is a lot harder. I was telling a friend of mine that what I love about the conversations you and I have, along with other uh, open-minded individuals from, within that lost sheep group, I love the challenge of, all right, let's find that common ground that we share and let's start there. Like, I love that challenge. I get more frustrated with Protestants and even more frustrated with fellow Catholics, because it's like, we agree on so much already. Why can't you just make that last little step? But with you, it's at least like, nope, we agree on so much. We have completely different worldviews. Of course, he doesn't agree with me.
Yeah, and so sometimes I get frustrated with not with you, James, but with like I'll use a term. It's not the nicest term, but like I'll say like the apologetics industrial complex. So
Yeah.
I get frustrated with the apologetics industrial complex, um, because it feels like the people like me should be the low-hanging fruit, in as much as like so all of these apologist types focus so much on like the nitty-gritty that you would think that the basics, right, should
Mhm.
be super easy. Like the basics should be apologetics 101. Like this is where, but for some reason they don't use the apologetics 101 on me and people like me. Instead, they only do the nitty-gritty on other Christians, Protestants and Orthodox or whatever. Um
Yeah.
and to me that almost feels like it's like, shouldn't I be the low hanging fruit? Like, shouldn't I be like your prime target or
Yeah.
something? But I'm not. And
Yeah. What I think the case there is, it has to do with, like, if you overlay two images that are so close together, it's easy to spot the differences. So even though the differences between, you know, Catholics and Lutherans, or Catholics and the Anglican Church, is so nitty gritty, it's because everything else is so in line until you get to that nitty gritty that it's easy to point out. But when you have to go 50 to 60 steps backwards and question assumptions that a lot of Christians have, that's where the challenge, I think, comes in from.
Yeah, no, you're entirely correct. You're entirely correct. But I think that like my contention, I guess,
Yeah.
is that like the professional apologists or the people who have YouTube channels should understand the 50 or 60 steps back. That should be so much easier than the stuff that's like way in front, because that's like, you can't be Catholic until you've made those 50 or 60 steps, right? So like it feels to me like some okay, so I think that a lot of Catholic apologists put the cart before the horse, in the sense that they focus so much on the nitty-gritty and not at all on the stuff like me, that I have a feeling that like if we were to get into a conversation, like I think that I would be able to make them think about the basics in ways that they haven't done so before, perhaps. I'm not saying I would convince them not to be Catholic or anything like that, but I think that a lot of YouTube Catholics would have a harder
I
time
mean,
talking than to like an evangelical, you know?
yeah, and there's a lot of truth to that as well. One of my approaches to the entire, like, I studied theology before I even studied apologetics, and like the basic apologetics that I did learn even beforehand was like I said, basics, like, oh, Catholics worship Mary, well, no, blah 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 blah. And the in-depth apologetics that I got into is because of the theology. And I think a lot of people do it backwards, where they
Mm.
learn the apologetics before they learn the theology. Bishop Barron is actually the reason why I went the approach that I did. He was at a talk at the seminary I was at, and someone had asked him, I don't know if you remember the term, back when like Facebook was starting out, they called it the new evangelization movement, using social media to
Huh.
evangelize and spread the gospel, essentially. And someone asked him, well, how would you recommend we go about this new evangelization? And he said, you want to get good at the new evangelization, master the old.
Hmm.
And I took that to heart and ran with it. And it wasn't until I started the Catholic Apologetics subreddit and that community that I started learning about, Trent Horn, Jimmy Akin. So, like, it's funny, people will put out these big name apologists, and I'm like, who?
Yeah.
If it's after Frederick Nietzsche, I probably have never heard of them.
Yeah, I do think that there are a lot of Catholic YouTube apologists whose apologetics diet only consists of people after Nietzsche. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of Catholic apologists on YouTube whose diet consists only of other YouTube Catholics, if I'm being honest. And calling Trent Horn and Jimmy Akin YouTube Catholics is not fair to either of them. But that's what I mean. I think that there is a lot of YouTube apologists who only have learned apologetics through Trent Horn and Jimmy Akin and the rest of the professionals. And yeah, I feel like those folks might not be as equipped to talk to somebody like me as they are to like an evangelical or something like that, which again is fine. Like nobody has to talk to me. It's just, I feel like I'm not the only person like me. And it just kind of feels like we are like less important to, to Catholic YouTube, which again, maybe we are, and that's fine, but more tech problems.
All right, you cut out completely for me on that, Kevin.
Okay.
But you were talking about like it's not fair to Trent Horn and Jimmy Akin to call them like the YouTube apologists. And what I got from the gist of what I did here is, a lot of Catholics are looking only at these individuals instead of what the church actually teaches or doing their own research.
Yeah, I think that a lot of modern Catholic YouTubers are only watching you said that if they're after Nietzsche, then you don't know about him, and I think that a lot of Catholic
Most
YouTubers,
likely, yeah.
yeah, but a lot of Catholic YouTubers are the exact opposite. Unless they're after Nietzsche, they don't know about him. To the point where I think that 100% of their apologetics diet comes from Jimmy Akin and Trent Horn and stuff like that, which is fine. But Jimmy Akin and Trent Horn are both Protestant converts. So I feel like their content is more, it works better on people who are already Christian. And that leaves the folks like me kind of feeling like it's not for us. Catholic apologetics aren't designed for people like me.
And that's where the whole apologetics is an ad hoc rationalization critique comes from. You and I had this conversation, I think, on my very first appearance on your channel, where my understanding of apologetics is very personal. Where if you're regurgitating Jimmy Akin, you're doing apologetics wrong. Not that Jimmy Akin is a bad apologist, but if that is the extent of your apologetics tool belt, is where you're just regurgitating information, you're doing it all wrong because it's meant to be a defense. So Jimmy Akin is a great apologist because he knows the theology. If you don't know the theology, you're not going to be a good apologist. You're just parroting something that you don't understand.
And I'm sure that Jimmy would tell you the exact same thing too. I'm sure that Jimmy would say like, "Oh yeah, like if you're regurgitating anything I said, then you're not thinking for yourself." So I'm sure that he would agree.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like yeah. Can I share with you another concern that I have about current apologetics? So here's another one of my concerns. This is like a new concern, like a growing concern that I have. And maybe you'll be able to tell me that I'm concerned about nothing. But there seems to be like this new Catholic apologetics thing that's happening where people are trying to turn it into a career. And like that kind of worries me a little bit. So I see Catholic apologists who are making courses for men. Sign up for my course and you can learn how to beat lust and stuff. And I'm like, okay, shouldn't you be trying to help people beat lust without getting paid for it? Like that worries me a little bit. And then also just like, I think that a lot of people's content also becomes like really tribalistic because that's what drives clicks and stuff like that. And that worries me. So those are two other complaints that I have about apologetics that are like newer complaints. And I just wonder, do you think I'm totally off base here? Do you see any? Like, can you agree at all?
So there is like a level of concern, like a right area of concern as far as like where the compensation / money comes into play, where it can muddy the water. Now, again, for people like Scott Hahn, Jimmy Akin, Trent Horn, I'm less concerned there because they've done the work beforehand. But as far as like people seeing them, and it kind of like what happened when PewDiePie got, showed that you can make a career out of, social media content and live streaming and everything else like that. Everyone wanted to be the next PewDiePie. I think Scott Hahn, Jimmy Akin, and Trent Horn are the equivalent of the PewDiePie phenomenon. And so you have a lot of individuals who want to turn this into a career, and they're passionate about it, and I love the fact that they're passionate about it. But you can't get to their level without the work that they put in. And I think a lot of people miss that. They think, oh, all I got to do is just get a laptop, $100 microphone, and I'm good to go.
I agree, even like doubly so. Not just because I think that the people like Jimmy Akin and Trent Horn have like done the work, but also because their revenue comes from like, I mean, I don't know exactly how they're paid, but I know that they get a salary from Catholic Answers. And I know that Catholic Answers makes their money like any other media company. Ads.
Yeah.
They have a radio show. They run ads. And that's fine. Like, I think that's fine to run ads. But what I think is slimy, maybe slimy is too aggressive of a word, but join my course and I will teach you how to find a trad wife. Like, dude, like, whoa, this is like used car salesman level. Do you know what I mean? Like, I find a huge difference between earning money off of ad revenue and earning money off of sign up for my course. It's way too close to me to like the grifter manosphere stuff. I don't know. Am I being like too skeptical here? Am I like too jaded or something? Oh, you'll let me know.
All right. I think I'm back. I am not sure what's going on because last time that I ran this, it ran perfectly fine. But from what I gathered, the effectively self-promotion, when they're self-promoting their own book, basically the equivalent of the college university professor saying, all right, so the subject for this class is this, and the required reading is the book I wrote on the subject. And you have to pay.
Yes, that, but also more. Like, I feel like some of the Catholic join my course and learn how to get a trad wife is just very manosphere coded, like very what Andrew Tate coded. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Andrew Tate.
I almost wouldn't even call that apologetics, and that's just. Actually, what's funny is this was the gospel reading today, where Jesus threw the moneylenders out of the temple. It's almost that, if not that, I feel, where they're selling the Catholic faith, they're selling the experience, so to speak. But yeah, like I wouldn't even call that like apologetics. Like, it's what it should be if they're going to be doing something like that is here's how you can be a traditional husband for your wife, as opposed to here's how you can get this. Because the Catholic perspective on things is how to be a better servant.
Yeah.
As
there's one new Catholic YouTuber who I think of every time that I talk about this like weird manosphere content. I won't say their name just out of respect. But this one person absolutely makes like sign up for my course on how to crush lust, and I will teach you 9 tricks on how to not sin against. It's like so weird. Like, it's just I don't know.
Yeah, no,
really
and
the wrong way.
That definitely doesn't help the image. And it's funny that I started this on this journey, and you and I are having this conversation. Pope Leo's been subtly attacking the rad trad community, as well as the people who have learned the Catholic faith only through online content.
Not so subtly, even.
Yeah. And as someone pointed out for the most recent one, he was basically telling people to go touch grass.
Yes, yep, I loved that one.
And that is the concern I've got with a lot of, I'm going to call it the amateur apologists, where they know a little bit more than the average Catholic, and they can handle themselves well in debates and conversations, but it's ego coded as opposed to church coded. I can't tell you the number of times we'll have people come in and they'll twist the teachings of the church, not to where it's at the point of a heretical statement, but it's borderline close, and it is completely misinterpreting and misrepresenting what the church says and what the saints have said. And it's disturbing. And because I was so focused on the old, I didn't realize that this was a thing until I started getting more and more exposed to it. But it's like, I've started saying, it's a shame when people come in and they're a political party first and Catholic second.
Yeah. There's a lot of like weird.
Doesn't matter what political party.
Yeah, I've been. There's like a lot of weird, like, if Pope Leo called a crusade, I would go on a crusade. Yet Pope Leo is telling you to love the immigrant, and you're not loving the immigrant. Like there's a lot of like stuff like that going on right now, which is like really.
Yeah.
It's which. And I'm not gonna make any friends for saying this, but I think that for like a non-insubstantial percentage of online Catholics, again, a non-insubstantial percentage, I'm not putting a number on it, just more than anyone wishes, I think that they are exactly what you said. I think that they are like MAGA Catholics, where it's kind of like, they're part of like the Church of Donald Trump, and it's just, they like the trappings of Catholicism. So like they'll, maybe even like Catholicism is a useful tool for them to push their political agenda. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's evident that they're not actually Catholic, because the Pope tells them to love the immigrants, and they're like, I'm going to pretend that I didn't hear that, and it's kind of like.
Exactly. And it's on both sides. I literally had a post in the Debated Catholic subreddit, and he was going through spamming everything. But on how we as Catholics should be in support of SNAP, and we should be upset at the government being shut down and the SNAP benefits being closed. And it's like, well, no, an argument could be made that we as a church should be the ones responsible for what SNAP is doing. Can we as a Catholic be in support of SNAP? Sure. But that's now on the left side, being political party first and Catholic second.
Can I play devil's advocate here?
Yeah.
So the current situation in the United States is that there are tens of millions of people or whatever who rely upon SNAP. The sudden removal of SNAP seems like an insurmountable obstacle for just the Catholic Church to overcome, right? And so it seems to me like the Catholic position on SNAP should be fairly clear, that it should be funded right now. And then if the Catholic Church can kind of strike some kind of deal with the US government, where the Catholic Church says, hey, you guys don't have to worry about SNAP anymore, we will fund SNAP. Fantastic. Excellent. But it seems really difficult for me to think that any Catholic should be chill with the defunding of SNAP instantly, like it was on November 1st. What do you think?
So the point that I was making is like more of,
in theory, was your point, kind of, right?
The point I was making was more of, this is a situation where a Catholic can have multiple stances. Can an argument be made, no, we should? Yes, absolutely. And can an argument be made that we as an individual should be more involved, and instead of just pawning it off to the government, and that's what Christ wants? Yeah, sure. The point I was getting at was like, the church doesn't have an official position. but because you had brought up the MAGA example, and I was using that to showcase this is on both sides. That you have people on the right using Catholicism to support their political means, but it is possible for someone on the left to do the same thing. That was more of the point that I was getting at, and just using that as an example and not making a statement on what a Catholic should be in support of or not in support of, because this is one where
I do agree, and I think that a lot of Catholics of the more progressive persuasion will like try to make certain verses in the Bible sound like gay affirming, when like I really just don't think that the Bible is a gay affirming text. Like I wish it was, but I don't think it is. So that's one spot where I would agree with you. But I very quickly Googled, so do you know how much money per month Snap requires to run?
I do not.
I didn't know this until
ever since like 2020, and maybe even a little bit before. I've kind of taken a step back out of politics because it's just gotten way too ugly for my taste. So I'm just I'm not going to get into it.
Yeah, me too. But I did quickly Google it, and it's like $41 million a month. And hold on, is that even right? Because it feeds 41 million people per month, and the spending is $100 billion per year. So unless we think that like the Catholic churches in the United States of America alone, because this is just the US, right?
Yeah.
Unless we think that the Catholic churches in the United States could give the US government $100 billion, which I don't think they can, then it seems no, go ahead.
The argument that I would make against it is we shouldn't be giving that money to the government anyways. It should be
I've lost you completely now, James. While you're gone, I'll talk just for the sake of the audience. But I was somebody who, like, I had my liberty. Oop, are you back?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Sorry, you were saying that you don't think that we should be giving the money to the government in the first place?
Yeah. Because that becomes kind of like a middleman. Like, what's to prevent us from doing it directly?
What do you think Snap is? Snap is directly. We're just loading money on EBT cards.
Well, no, but you had talked about like, what if the government, the church gives that money to the government? Well, why does
the church can put the money onto the cards themselves?
Yeah, or that's the whole point that I'm getting at. It's like,
I'm with you in terms of government inefficiency. I do think that the government is rather inefficient on almost everything it touches. And so that's why I love the SNAP program, because the government was like, guys, we have no idea what to do with food. So instead of trying to do anything, we're just going to give people debit cards that are only good for certain food types. That's such a brilliant solution in my mind, because I don't think that the government is very good. Like, can you imagine a government-run restaurant where it's like, oh yeah, come on in and like you eat for free as long as you show your ID and you're on some list? That would be the most inefficiently run restaurant ever. So the government said, we're not going to do that because we're not in the food business. We're just going to load up debit cards, give those debit cards to people who don't have enough money. And then those debit cards are only good for food items that qualify. And those food items never touch the government. Those are oftentimes excess and overflow from our own farmers, which I think is a brilliant program. I'm a big fan of SNAP. And I'm like a government person generally.
Yeah, and that's fine. But then we got the problem of what happens when the government's, the government's not operating anymore, so we run into that problem. So like that's the whole point that I was getting at, is like, there's a saying that I heard, and I don't know who said it or where it comes from, but it's stuck with me. Almost every religion out there demands that you do not steal. Christianity goes a step further and demands that you must give. So what EBT does, and this is like my main issue, what EBT does is it gives Catholics a lazy excuse to say, oh, well, the poor are being taken care of, I don't have to give. No, we're commanded to give. So ultimately, that's where my concern is it's removing that charity aspect from Catholics and making it easy for them to make that as an excuse. But that's not a reason to not have EBT. Let me be clear on that. But as far as like as far as like, should a Catholic be in support question?
You're breaking up again, James. I guess, to fill the dead air, I'll say,
I'm not sure what's going on with.
Got your back. You back?
Yes.
Okay.
I am back.
I think I can respond to what you were saying, because I think I got most of it. You were saying that, Catholics shouldn't think about SNAP as like, I don't have to give any money to the poor because of the SNAP program. I agree. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. I will say though that I do want to I want to push back on the very first thing you said, where like all religions say that you should be charitable, but like Christianity says you have to give back. What did you say?
All religions teach that you shouldn't steal.
But
Christianity teaches that you should give.
Yeah.
And it wasn't only Christianity, just Christianity teaches.
Okay. Yeah. Because I also want to point out that like one of the 5 pillars of Islam is giving to the poor. So like, I do feel like that's another mainstay of most religion too. Well, just between Christians and Muslims, that's already like 3/4 of the global population or whatever. Maybe not 3/4, but it's like half of the global population is either Christian or Muslim or something, right?
Yeah, but that's not the same as the different religions out there. Like if you look at, the Greco-Roman religions, there wasn't anything about charity. And you look at a lot of the pre-Abrahamic religions, there wasn't a thing about charity. In fact, in what we get in Exodus with the very basic laws that then turn into, what Christians follow in the New Testament, there was still an element of charity of like, hey, look, this is what your Gentile neighbors are doing. Don't do that and be better.
Yeah. There's this really cool book called On the Origin of Satan by Dr. Elaine Pagels. And she spends the first 2 chapters of the book giving kind of like this historical backdrop of like what's going on in the 1st century. And she's kind of comparing and contrasting like first century Judaism, which includes Christians at this point, against the Greco-Roman society around them.
Yeah.
And she has this really interesting theory about Jesus as this radical pacifist, pretty much. I guess there was this group of Jews at the time who would like literally like, so the first Jewish-Roman war was going on during the 1st century, right? That's when the temple was destroyed and all that. There was this group of Jews, and I forget their name, but they would like march into the way of the Roman army and just like sit there and be like, no, we're not moving. Like, you'll have to kill us. And like the Romans would kill them like routinely.
So,
and they'd be like,
road protests. Roadblock protests have been around for millennia.
Yes, exactly. And so Dr. Pagel's point was that like Jesus, like we don't know this, right? Because we're piecing who the historical Jesus was is probably like it's a hard thing to know.
Yeah.
But maybe Jesus was in some way like a part of, and I'm not saying that he was literally part of this movement, but like there seems to have been this radical kind of pacifism, because like Jesus isn't just saying don't, hurt each other. He's saying don't even think angry thoughts towards each other because you've already
Yeah.
sinned. Don't just not cheat on your wife. Don't even have lustful thoughts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like there's something really radical about this Jesus guy, right? And so yeah, I just think that's kind of neat. Like it's like a neat, and that goes your whole point was that comparing it against the kind of the Greco-Roman religions, it seems pretty different. And I agree, it does seem pretty different than the other first century groups. I just think that's kind of neat.
So that was a fun little sidetrack, side quest.
That was, yeah.
No, that's
I just thought it was neat.
Yeah, no, and that's one of the fun things I like about conversations with you is you and I both get hyper fixated on a subject and we just follow that rabbit hole.
We do.
But one of the things that has stood out to me a lot was one of the members in your Discord. Let me see if I can find the quote easily. But they shared how they came into your Discord to vent and complain and, raise their fist against, the Catholic Church. But I turned it into an educational experience for them. And that's something that I've always strived to do. Is that something that you feel apologetics as a whole it tends to lack when it comes to just interacting with non-Catholics in general, whether it's agnostic atheists like yourself or even just Protestants, where it's got to be about victory instead of educating?
Yes, but I'll even go a step further, and I'll say that sometimes I'll get frustrated with and not you again, not you, but there will be a certain type of apologist who thinks that all that I need is some like basic education, and then I'll be like, like, Kevin, did you know the Catholics don't worship Mary? And then, oh my goodness, I can be Catholic again now. That was the only thing holding me back, and that's like clearly not the case. So yes, I agree that there are some apologists who think it's only about winning, but then further, I think that there are some apologists who just assume that I'll say but this will apply to anybody like me. They'll assume that like I know nothing about Catholicism, and so clearly if I'm not Catholic, it's because of some kind of like misunderstanding that I have. And so it's just a matter of educating me the right way. And then all of a sudden I'll be right back. And I find, I will say that I do find that to be like demeaning to some extent, because like, I think that you think, and again, not you, but like the apologist, the hypothetical apologist. I think that you think that I'm an idiot. And I don't think that I'm an idiot. I mean, I know I am to some extent, but like, I don't think that I think that I know more about the Catholic Church than the average Joe. So it's a little demeaning, even when some apologists think it's just a matter of education. And it's like, well, probably not, because I even happen to think that I might know more than your average Catholic.
And if they're a good apologist or they're good at theology, they should know it's not a matter of education. Because the Catholic Church herself, and I think that this was, again, something that you and I talked on one of our conversations where it was the misquote by Aquinas about the, for one with faith, no explanation is necessary, but for one without faith, no explanation is sufficient. And, I shared that even though that's a misquote, I love it because I understand it differently than a lot of people. But to me, it's a reminder that it doesn't matter how good of a job I explain it. Knowledge isn't what's going to get you to be Catholic. It's that grace of faith and you being open to that. And yeah, like if someone is treating it as if, oh, if I just teach him this one thing, he'll be Catholic. It's like, no, you're going about the faith all wrong. That's dangerously close to the modernist heresy that the church was concerned about.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, the it's really funny when I like if I'm like new in a or sometimes not even new, but like if a new person bumps into me in my Discord, in your Discord, in the comment section under a Joe Heschmeyer video, in wherever it might be, um, I might mention I'm not Catholic,
Mhm.
and they'll be like, "Oh, why aren't you Catholic?" And I'll be like, "Well, it's a lot of stuff, but just I guess a couple quick points are
Yeah.
like." I don't think transubstantiation is possible. And I might list like one or two other things. And they'll be, oh, well, did you know that transubstantiation? And I'll be like, yes, like I understand this stuff. I promise you, I've thought about this for more than 5 minutes.
Yep.
And so yeah.
No, and in your case for like for the audience, you like your case for the transubstantiation is it goes back to like what you and I talked about at the very beginning of this about like I love the challenge to that worldview. And you approach the subject matter of the Eucharist from a nominalist worldview, and even though the Catholic Church hasn't made the philosophy of Thomas Aquinas and Aristotle its official philosophy, especially with the Eucharist, they basically use that language wholeheartedly. Uh, but
Yeah.
that's the reason why you struggle with it is because you don't agree with that model and that language that's used. It's not because you don't understand the language in the model. It's just you don't think that's how the world works, and you haven't found, even though Jimmy Aiken and I'm kind of thinking on it in the background as well, how express like it is possible to believe in the real presence as a nominalist. But I noticed in his video he didn't explain how.
Yeah. Um, and something else that I'll say too that I think I thought about like more recently than my conversation with Jimmy Aiken is that if you actually read the Council of Trent, which is where they defined
Mhm.
what the real presence is, right?
Yeah.
So the Council of Trent specifically says, and some Catholics will tell me, well, you don't have to believe in transubstantiation because the Council of Trent is like, this is how we think that it occurs. And that's not really what the Council of Trent says. The Council of Trent says, hey, look, this is what happens. The substance moves, it translates, it
Yep.
transitions, whatever. And we call this transubstantiation. And so, like, the undertext, you can call this whatever you want. But the council very clearly is like, no, what happens is the substance moves. Call it whatever you want. But the substance is transported away and a new substance is transported in. Okay. So
Mhm.
call it whatever you want, but that's what's going on. And it's like, I just don't know how you can read Trent and come away thinking that substances aren't needed in like call it what you
Yeah.
want, but substances are part of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that like you kind of touched on I think the two extremes that I have seen in the apologetics community, and it's definitely a line that I try to walk every day. You have those that are overly strict on what the documents say, where everything has equal infallible dogmatic weight. And then you've got those where it's the exact opposite, where nothing has dogmatic infallible weight, to the point where, like you were saying, they were saying, "Oh no, you can disagree with Trent," and it's like, be careful saying that.
Yeah.
But I think, like, I don't know if you saw my conversation with Midnight Philosopher, but one of the questions,
Like 5 minutes of it. I need to finish it.
but like one of the questions in the chat was, or it was either him, no, it was him that had asked this question on like how I got to where I was in my faith journey and what I read and like what my study was like, and it's like there isn't one specific thing I can point to, but I've been looking back on it, and it's like what's funny is I was reading stuff from pre-Vatican II in a post-Vatican II family, and so like I was exposed to both traditions, so to speak. And I think that really helped with that balance in understanding the nuance between what happened with Vatican II and everything leading up to it. Um, Especially with like what Pope Francis talks about is the nostalgic idolatry. Um, I did not have any illusions about, because one of the saints I was reading was one of the Saint Catherines, one of the first female doctors of the church, and where she had to go up to the Pope and was like, "No, stop living in France, move to Rome. You're causing too much confusion." And so I knew that like even during the golden age of the church was not good.
And that was during the time of the three popes and all that, right? Like
Yes.
that was
Yeah.
yeah. There was like the three different papal lineages that were all fighting one another, and they were all excommunicating one another, and
it was just a mess.
yeah.
So I knew that even before Vatican II that the church was messy, and it's still messy. So I didn't have this rose tinted glasses looking back on the past where, so I feel like I'm very fortunate, and because of my love of the philosophers, like had a great big book that was this thick that had like a bunch of different little fables and stories, including some excerpts from like Plato's works, little snippets of conversation. So I was reading that before I was 10 years old and being exposed to the philosophy. And it's just like, I can't tell you one thing that got me where I'm at because it's 20 years of experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I share a quick little story with you about my
Yeah.
rose-colored glasses? So
Yes.
this isn't specifically my rose-colored glasses, but it is the rose-colored glasses that this is how my community was. So I remember being in 7th grade and having a conversation where we were talking about we were lamenting the fact that the United States is not a predominantly Catholic country. Like
Mm-hmm.
we lived in the Northeast, which sure is a pretty Catholic. It's the most Catholic part of the country, but we live in a Protestant country, right? And so we were kind of like lamenting this. And somebody said to another one of us, like, yeah, but where would you rather live? Like, where's better? And without missing a beat, the other one of us says, France. Like as if France is this bastion of Catholicism.
Yeah.
And like we had to tell this kid who was the same age as all, we were like, France is not today what we all think. Like King Louis the 14th or whatever might have been canonized. But he died like 300 years ago or whatever. Like France is not that anymore. And the next day he came into school. He said, "Okay, guys, not France, but," and then he, and the conversation continued. But that kind of rose-colored glasses is, and like, France, right? St. John Vianney, right? Like this is the France that we were all thinking of. But it was the France of 150 years ago.
Of only two people.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that's, but this is what we kind of like, we thought of the whole world as always being like, like everybody was as holy as St. John Marie Vianney. And then the modernists took over and ruined everything. And so the past 50 years have been uniquely terrible. But before the last 50 years, everyone was as holy as St. John Vianney. And, so like that's
Well,
kind
if everyone
of like,
was as holy as St. John Vianney, then why did he go to the Rs and have to fight against all the sin and rampant,
That's right. And all the dancing, God forbid. But yeah, but all that just to kind of illustrate the rose-colored glasses that we all had on to some degree or another in the little community that I grew up in.
So do you think, because you and I have touched on this before, that like and the same is true for me, like if you had met me 10 years ago, I would have been probably a very lot more arrogant than I am now. Just being honest. Not that I wasn't trying, but definitely a lot more arrogant. But you shared the same thing as well, that when you were going through your deconstruction, there was that period where you were angry at the church. You are now no longer in that. You still have a lot of frustrations, but you're no longer angry. I would say. But you're in a rare situation where even though you're not angry, you still have a love, passion, and desire to investigate and talk about Catholicism. Whereas I feel like a lot of people in your situation, they only interact with the Catholic Church because they're angry. And I know for myself, and I'm sure even for yourself, it's not fun interacting with angry people.
I just
So
don't. I just don't interact with angry people.
So do you think
that
that might be part of the reason why? Because a lot of the interactions coming from ex-Catholics are people who are angry at the church, whether justified or not, but they're angry at the church, and so they're responding in that anger, and people just don't want to interact with that anger.
Yeah, that's probably a big part of it. I imagine too that like for a lot of ex-Catholics, they go from being angry to then being disinterested. You know what I mean? Like they just don't care anymore.
Yeah.
And so if you're talking to an ex-Catholic, you're talking to one who is not yet disinterested. And if they're not disinterested yet, it's probably because they're angry, right? So that very well might have like a big thing to do with it, right? Yeah. I guess there's not like a whole lot of people like me,
like you who
aren't angry and still stick around. I almost feel like I had no choice though. Like it's like,
and not to get too deep into it because you shared your story with me on one of our conversations, but I don't blame you for feeling that way. Like,
well, thank you. Yeah. And for the record, what I meant by like I don't have any choice in it is kind of like if you grew up with like your parents were like Italian immigrants, like you don't have any choice but to be Italian. Like, and that's how I feel about being Catholic. It's like wow, it's the culture I grew up in. Like I don't have a choice. Now obviously I have a choice to practice the religion, and so I don't practice the religion, but like culturally, it's still my culture. To this day, so my wife and I, we've been married for 7 years and together for 12. And I still every now and then say something that I think is normal. Like, oh yeah, growing up, we all did X. And she'll look at me and be like, we did not all do X. Like that is a weird trad thing that only you did. It's like stuff like that makes me feel very much so still culturally. Like I can't change the way I grew up, So
exactly.
So even though I'm not angry anymore, it's still my culture.
Yeah. So to help people like myself, and even within the apologetics industrial machine and individuals, because there was a video you shared by Shameless Potpourri, Joe Heschmeyer, where he was referring to a speech while he himself didn't say this, and I forget what the phrase was, but there was a phrase in that talk that really upset you. Something along the lines of like, "Oh, you're atheist because you want to sin," or like something along those lines. And when I watched the video, I could see how you got that message, but that wasn't the word said, and that wasn't the audience he was speaking to. But I could see the hurt from when you were sharing it. So, what are some things as a Catholic wanting to have a conversation with an angry Kevin who's angry at the church? What are some things or phrases that I should avoid to maybe turn that into a fruitful conversation?
Part of me says just leave angry Kevin alone, let him be angry, and yeah, like honestly, like somebody who's like legitimately that angry, probably yeah, I'll just speak for myself. For like at least a solid year, I wasn't capable of having like a fruitful conversation. Because I was angry, and I like to think justifiably so. And I think it's okay that I wasn't able to have a fruitful conversation for a while. Like it's I think it's good to be angry about things that are worth being angry about, like you know, if the government came in and like started rounding up Catholics and like putting them in concentration camps, and the Catholics were like, nobody be angry about this. I mean, that'd be crazy. No, you should be angry about that, right? And obviously, I'm not saying that anything like that happened to me. I'm just saying there is such a thing as good anger, or not good anger, but justified anger.
Again, that was the gospel reading today. Jesus was angry at the moneylenders in the temple.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, there is such a thing as a justified anger, and so, but yeah, I think that my advice for like me of 6 years ago would be like, just leave me alone.
Okay.
Like, in all honesty,
And sometimes, like, it took me a while, but then 2 passages stuck to me and I tell them to myself to help remind me to do this. The first one is, the parable of the sower going out to sow, and like the sower didn't change the soil; he just spread the seed, and then just let nature take its course. And then the second one, this might come off as insulting to some people, but I'm sorry, but it helps me. It helps my sanity. When Jesus says, "Don't toss your pearls before swine,"
yeah,
if they're not going to accept it, if they're not going to listen to you, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't me saying that you're people who don't listen are swine, but it's just, you're not willing to listen. Why should I talk?
Yeah. And just to make it, on both sides, like, I called myself of 6 years ago out. There's a lot of Catholics who I'm not particularly interested in talking to, because I don't think that they're like ready to, like, so I'll call people out by name because I don't particularly care. Like the Avoiding Babylon crew. Like I've offered to talk to them like several times, even after they were like, they called me, I forget what they said about me. I'm not on Twitter, but they said,
I heard you mention the tweet, but it was basically something about how you are,
I'm a snake or something like that. Like I'm something weird. So I offered to talk to them several times before and after that. And they said no. And so at this point, I'm like, actually, they never responded, is what I should have said. And at this point, I'm kind of like, okay, like that's fine.
Yeah.
Like they aren't interested in talking to people. And like, if I bumped into somebody like Anthony, and then we were at a bar, and he was like, "You should be Catholic," and I was like, "Well, actually, I think that the Gospels are anonymous, and I think that that's a bigger problem for Catholics than other people might think. And let me tell you why." Like, I don't think that they would listen, like, so it's just kind of like, okay, all right, like, have a good one.
And it's definitely a thing on both sides. It's not a
right. That's my point.
That's a human. Yeah, that's a human problem.
Yes, and I won't call anyone swine, but I will say that expression has truth in it, even if I won't call people swine.
Yeah, and it's same for me.
Me of 6 years ago wouldn't listen. I think there are plenty of Catholics today who wouldn't listen to me, and that's okay. Is my point.
Yeah.
That's okay. Not everyone has to listen to me. Not everyone has to want to talk to me. It's I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and I get that. So it's and listen, I'm preaching.
I mean, there was someone who accused you and your buddies, whoever those buddies are, of ruining the Debated Catholic subreddit. I shared that with you.
Wait. Yeah. But that one user who was, and he was like convinced that you were in like cahoots with me or something, right?
Yeah.
He was like, why? He's like, why are you letting him get away with this? And you're like, what? I remember. But yeah, that was crazy.
So let me rephrase my question then, because like you had said, Kevin of 6 years ago, probably don't have a conversation with him. Just let him be. What about the Kevin for today? What are some statements or comments or arguments that push you away? And what are some things that a Catholic can do to show that they are willing to listen and engage with you?
Yeah, fantastic question. And it's going to be a weird and disjointed answer, but let me do my best. Things that push me away first. Something that really pushes me away is kind of like the arrogant attitude of like, I know more than you because I've studied apologetics for 2 months. And so now I'm going to, I read a little booklet about the 5 ways, and now I'm going to make Kevin Catholic again. It's like, oh my goodness, please.
Love the enthusiasm. Yes. Rein it in.
Yes, exactly.
What's that meme? he's got the wrong idea, but he's got the spirit or something like that.
He's got the spirit or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
There's but I think that like some people who've got the spirit like that, they don't mean it to come out like this, but it comes across as being like really arrogant,
Yeah.
where it's like they are treating me like I haven't done the 2 months of apologetic study that they have. And that turns me off like right away.
Mhm.
Like if you come in there all arrogantly assuming that like, you know, you because you read this like 10-page pamphlet on the 5 ways, like now you can, like that turns me off because I'm like, I don't need to listen to you. You know, I feel like an old man almost kind of like yelling at the
Yeah.
kid, like, you know, I feel like Ron Swan. Have you seen Parks and Rec?
I've seen snippets of it, so I know
Okay.
who Ron Swanson is.
Ron Swanson like walks into a Home Depot and one of the Home Depot
Yes, I've
people
seen
walks up
that.
to him,
Yeah.
"Can I help you? I know more than you." And he just walks away.
Yep.
Like I don't literally mean that like I know more than, but
Yep.
I do know more than some of these apologists who come in
Mhm.
very arrogantly, and it's like that turns me off. I'm not interested in
Like,
having the
and
conversation.
this is more of a testament to your knowledge. I think you were shocked at how much I knew
Yeah.
when we were having a conversation, and it's like, okay, this guy actually might know a little bit more than me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Which you know, I think that there's a lot of Catholics who try to do more than you knowing less than you, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like they're
It's
trying to
I've
be.
recently found out that this might not be real, but I am still convinced that it's a real thing, the Dunning-Kruger effect, where,
Yeah, yeah. Like you
like
don't know
I
what you
read
don't
somewhere
know,
like,
so you
yeah,
yeah.
but like I'm convinced it's real, but I read somewhere that apparently no actual study's been done on it, so they don't know if it's real or not. But
I mean, it seems real enough to me. Like
yes,
that, you know, you don't realize how much that there is to know, so you think you know it all, even that, but it's just because you're ignorant that you think that you know it all. Yeah.
yep.
Just intuitively
So
it seems true.
so step one, be humble and know that you don't know everything, and the person that you're talking to might know more than you.
Or at least just that the person that you're talking to might know different things than you. Like not even
Yes,
necessarily that they know more, but it's just like maybe they know more about the first
the
century
5 ways.
Roman culture or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure. What you know, whatever, you know. They know 17th century mysticism better and you know 18th century mysticism better. Whatever,
yep,
you know, just go into it knowing that people might know different things than you.
yes.
Um Something else that I think really turns me off, and then things that people could do better um, are, and we've kind of touched on this already, but the you just want to sin type attitude
Mhm.
slash and I'll say this, like the "Oh, I'll pray for you attitude. Again, not I really appreciate
Bless
when
your
people
soul,
are
Father,
honest.
and bless your soul.
Yes, exactly, exactly. I really appreciate it when somebody authentically says, like, "Hey, do you mind if I pray for you when I say my rosary
Mhm.
tonight?" No, I love that. Yes, please do include me in your rosary tonight.
Yeah,
I would love that. But it's the condescending, like, "Ah, like, I'll pray for you because you're
yeah,
just a sinner and you know." So
yeah.
that attitude, and I'm putting that in a different category than the arrogant attitude, because the arrogant person might have no idea that I'm a sinner. But
Yeah.
then I have spoken to Catholics who like I've mentioned like, oh no, like I grew up Catholic. Like you know, I know I at least know the basics because I grew up Catholic. And then when they learn that I grew up Catholic and not like Protestant or something, then all of a
Mhm.
sudden it's like, oh, you're ex-Catholic, and then like the
Yeah.
conversation is a very different tone. That turns me off too. Because if I'm like, okay, like if you're just gonna sit here and like judge me for
Mhm.
not believing the same things that you do, like never mind, we don't have to have this conversation. Um,
There's a phrase that I say, and I haven't had anyone complain about it or anything, but let me run it by you and see if it's something that you would appreciate, especially when someone tells me that they're leaving or and they're dead set on it, or um, you know, it's been made clear that the conversation isn't really going to go anywhere, and they're still dead set on exploring whatever route that they go. I'll say, well, Kevin, I definitely hope you find the truth that you're looking for. Now, in my
yeah,
mind and heart, my belief is God is truth, and if you say you're trying to find ultimate truth, I hope you find God. Like that's what I'm thinking here, but I'm saying it in a way that I feel they can hear.
I think that exact phrase could be said two very different ways, because I think that it could be said in a condescending way, and then that wouldn't be cool. But I think that it could be said in a sincere way, and then it is super
Yeah.
cool. So like, let me try to say it in like a sincere way. Like, so, all right, hey man, listen, at the end of the day, I just hope that you find the truth. Like wherever the truth leads you, man, I hope you find it.
Yep.
I think that comes off as sincere. But if you like, you could say something like, well, Catholicism is true, so I hope you find the truth. That would be, so, but I think that the way that you said it was way closer to the former and
First
way
one,
further
yeah.
from the latter. So I think the way that you said it is great. I just want your audience to know that there could be a way that could, you can mess that one up.
And that goes back to if all you're doing is just regurgitating what someone else said, that's not real apologetics in my perspective.
Yeah.
But so would it be fair to say that, especially for someone who, in your position, because, I shared the little bit of double speak that I was doing there. Now, it wasn't malicious. It's sincere. But I feel like a lot of Catholics especially are afraid of that kind of double speak. Again, like if you watch the video or conversation I had with the Midnight Philosopher, I pointed out one of his videos where he's talking about and thinking on the nature of hell, and he describes hell as separation from the community, separation from his family, losing his friends and family. And I point out that he was pretty much on the money on what hell is, and that he was very close to the nature of heaven and hell. And, the only thing that I didn't mention until someone in the chat brought it up was, in order for it to be like absolutely perfect, he would have needed to have included the beatific vision. But other than that, he was on point. I am okay giving up territory, so to speak, to meet upon that agreed upon point before we can explore the disagree. Do you think too many Catholics are too worried about winning every single battle, so to speak, in order to win the war, and afraid of giving up a little bit of ground?
So yes, but I'd be a hypocrite if I said that like I didn't also do that when I was Catholic, because and I think it's just like kind of the trad in me wants to be like, no, it is, this is the way that it is, So like you're right, but that's something that I didn't do when I was Catholic. Like I was very hardline, and like I get it, I get the not wanting to give an inch.
And that's what I was talking about, is like being like where they are so hardline because they're afraid that if they give up a little bit, say, hey, we agree 90% of the way, let's talk about the 10%. It's 100% or nothing. Right. Do you think that's a part of the...
Yes, I think that attitude gets in the way of productive conversation. However, I also understand the fear of giving an inch. I get, because that was me, right? So like I get it, but I think it gets in the way of productive conversation. So something that I really like that like you seem happy to be like, and I'm just gonna pick this as an example. But like, hey, for the sake of conversation, let's assume that the Gospels are anonymous, for the sake of conversation. And then you'll take it from there and, we'll have a productive conversation. I would never have done that like when I was so Catholic. And I
learned about the Q source in seminary.
In theology school? Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's the funny thing is like the trads are like more conservative than like theology schools,
But yeah, so I think a lot of it comes from me recognizing what actually matters for the conversation. And I think I shared this with you at one point. I was having a conversation with another atheist on the dancing sun miracle. And he was discounting, the photos. He was discounting the news sources. He was discounting this, that, all the other. And I was like, hey, look, like, that's fine. Like, if the sun didn't literally dance, that's fine. Like, if it was a weather phenomenon, that works within my worldview. What matters is we had 3 children that were shepherds with no education who had no idea about weather phenomenon predict something would happen on this day. Oh, I did share this with you because you pointed out Lucia thought it was the soldiers coming home from the war was the miracle. But, like, I was okay. Like, I feel like a lot of Catholics would be terrified to say, no, the sun, to give up that the sun literally danced around. I'm like, no, that's not the important part. The important part is the fact that these 3 children predicted something. That's the interesting part, not whether the sun danced or not. Something happened that day. These 3 kids said something was going to happen, and we haven't had a solid enough replication of it. I know there's been some theories as far as like what the weather phenomenon was, but
I don't want to get distracted, but maybe next time we talk, we can talk about it. I've been doing a lot of reading on Fatima recently.
Yeah.
Where are my? So I bought a couple new books. I'm going to take off my headset, but I'm not even going out of frame. Ready? Hold on. There's more than just these 2. I just don't know where I put them. But this is God and the Sun at Fatima by Father Stanley L. Jackie, and then this is Heavenly Lights by a Portuguese researcher. Two of them, Joaquin Fernandez and Fina de Armada.
Mm-hmm.
These 2 books are awesome. And then I also have been reading. So these are both older. They're from the 70s and 80s and stuff like that. But I've also been reading some more recent stuff, which has been comparing and contrasting the sun miracles. And a lot of people don't know this, but there are sun miracles that are still going on today. Especially for oh my gosh, the name, the Eucharist, the Marian apparitions that are going on in Eastern Europe to this day. The seers are still alive. They started in the 80s.
I know the one you're talking about because there's been some controversy about it like a few months ago in the Catholic subreddit.
I have to look this up because it's a hard to pronounce name. Garabandal or whatever. Yeah, right. Those are still ongoing. Are they? I think so. Regardless, there are miracles of the sun that have been caught on camera.
Yeah.
And so you can actually look at the crowd, and the crowd, like you see, there's this one video that I'm thinking of where this woman is like crying and she's pointing at the sun, and the camera pans over to the sun, and the sun's just kind of there. It's just kind of hanging out. And the camera pans back to this lady, and she's like crying, saying the Hail Mary, like clearly, like she's seeing something. And I don't know, it makes me think about Fatima in a new way where, and that's a whole tangent. We should talk about Fatima another time. But
and the point of that was just like the willingness to, like I said, give up ground or recognize what's important in the chain of thought, I guess. I might be mispronouncing her username. That one girl, Ray, in one of our conversations had, and I wish I saw it on the live stream at the time, but she had challenged me. It's like, you hold yourself in this high regard for being able to think things through logically. Do you understand logic? Do you feel like you understand logic better than the average person? And my answer to her would have been, I know logic at an average level. Unfortunately, I think our education in America has failed us to the point where the average American knows logic at a sub-average level.
Well, isn't that like an oxymoron? Like, doesn't the average American know?
Well, that's why I'm trying to phrase it. Well, that's why I said know it at an average level. So, like how they say, like a 5th grade reading level. Well, that's not the. I don't think most Americans read at a, like whatever, like that's supposed to be like the average reading level for 5th grade, but not every 5th.
Sure. Yeah. It's like that's where the average student should be versus
Yeah,
where
and
they
that's
are.
what I was trying to get. It's like I
Yeah.
feel like I feel like I have an understanding of logic that the average American should have. Like, I don't know if you've seen them, but I love them. The TED Ed, I think is it, but it's the YouTubes for like TED Talks and things like that. They've got a little sub series of like logic puzzles and riddles, and I love watching them.
Oh,
I
I don't
have
think I know
only
about
solved
those.
I have solved only two of them.
They're tough.
They are the what is it like? Um, there's 15 people all lined up in a row where you can only see the people in front of you, and you cannot communicate with each other by color, and all of you are wearing either a white or a black hat, and you have to determine how many black hats there are. You know, so those ridiculously difficult logic puzzles. I love watching them and throwing my brain at it. Like I said, I've only solved like two, maybe three of them.
Yeah.
But it's those are supposed to be like the high level logic puzzles. You know, the ones that you get your doctorate and you're able to solve. Um, but I understand and can see and know when like a logical fallacy is being used. Um, and I think that's another problem. Again, just in general, is on like people know about the five ways, but they don't know how the logical structure was formulated and what the purpose of Thomas Aquinas was using. A great video on it is by Unsolicited Advice. He did a fantastic breakdown. The title of the video, "The Argument That Every Atheist Gets Wrong," or something like that. But he does a fantastic job of breaking down the logic structure, and I think that's the flaw a lot of these amateur apologists want to have. It's they don't know the philosophy background, they don't know the theology background, and more than that, they don't have the. I mean, if you got the philosophy background, it helps with the logic, but they haven't worked their logic muscles.
Yeah, I don't think many of us have, in all honesty.
So, you mentioned the 2.5, 3 things that drove you away. The condescending attitude, the arrogance. I'm sorry, where acting like believing that they know more than you and not knowing where you're coming from. The condescending attitude coupled with of you just want to sin, that's why you left, as well as the well, I'll pray for you. So what are some things that we can do to not push you away?
Yeah. So in a lot of ways, I think it's going to be just the polar opposite of those things.
Yeah.
So the humility to know the humility to appreciate that everyone that you talk to might know different things than you. Again, not more.
Yeah.
They just might know different things than you know. So that'll be one piece. With regards to like the I'll pray for you attitude, instead of going in there all defensive and condescending, be open minded. Um, what's the point of having a conversation if you don't think you can possibly learn anything new, right? So either don't do apologetics or go into it thinking, yeah, I could be wrong. Like I could be. I don't think that I am because nobody thinks that
Yeah.
they are, but you could be, right?
Well,
Um,
and there's 2 points that I want to point on that. Like the first is even St. Paul talks about like I think apologetics is our speaking in tongues in Paul's day. In Paul's day everyone wanted to speak in tongues. Nowadays everyone wants to get into apologetics, but as Paul says, like no, not everyone's called to speak in tongues. If everyone spoke in tongues, nothing would get done. No one would know what anyone was saying. We need to have some gift of prophecy in there to translate the gift of tongues, and we need this and this and this and this. So you can have a great love and see what people like, Jimmy Akin, Trent Horn are doing, and have a great admiration for what they're doing. but that might not be what you're called to do. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is, oh, and I lost my train of thought. Oh, this was said to me by a spiritual director in seminary. When you want to be careful in regards to like the open mind aspect. And the way that my spiritual director described it is beautifully said. And I think the concern a lot of people have as far as like open-minded, when they think open-minded, they think empty, as in I'm just going to accept whatever is told to me. What open-minded actually means is a discerning mind. It doesn't mean that you're gonna join the camp of the first thing that you hear, or that you have to accept whatever said. Another bastardized quote that I also love the bastardized version of is from Aristotle, where the sign of an intelligent mind is one that can grasp an idea or comprehend an idea without accepting it.
That's from a Civilization game. That's where I know it
Okay.
from. It's from
Civ 6. Okay. But the point of it is like it's so true, even if it's not something that was actually said. I'm not saying it's not a real quote. I'm saying that that quote was featured in a Civilization game, and that's where I know it from. But I think that bastardized version might have predated it, because I've heard. But regardless, like the whole point was, I've started looking at conversations I've been having with people, and there's even a couple of times where I've tried to do this in your Discord and it didn't work out, where I would say, hey, we need to assume this if we're going to have this conversation, and they couldn't assume it without accepting it. You know, you had talked about like, hey, let's assume, you know, you would use this as the example for me of like, hey, let's go ahead and assume that the Gospels are anonymous. What does that change? And that is a skill that is extremely lacking. And if you don't have that skill, that doesn't make you a bad person. Like, that's okay. You can still be a good Catholic and not have that. You can be a good atheist. You can be a good whatever. Yeah. Just understand that you can't engage in dialogue like this if you don't have that skill set of being able to listen and understand what the other person is saying without being forced to accept it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, if you want to go into apologetics, you have to be willing to consider things from different perspectives. And if you're unwilling to do that, that's fine. Just don't do apologetics. Yeah.
And again, nothing wrong with that. Like,
right, exactly.
You know,
not everyone
my mom,
should be an apologist.
Yeah. My mom is not cut out to be an apologetics, like, at all. But she is one of the most loving, kind, compassionate, spiritual individuals. You need help, she will drop everything to help you out. My brother, been cancer-free for over 3-4 years now, but was diagnosed with cancer, lived 5 hours away. My mom dropped everything, lived with him essentially while he was in the hospital, making sure that everything was taken care of until he recovered. And this was someone who had left the Catholic faith and basically had denounced her.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about. You know, you don't need to be able to do apologetics to do any of that.
No. And she's expressed to me that like she can't do what I do, and she admires me for what I'm able to do, but she understands that her role is in Christ Church is different than what mine is, and there's a beauty and a grace to that I think a lot of people are missing.
I don't have the numbers on this, but I have to. If I was to bet, I would bet that that approach has won more converts than the apologetics approach.
Oh,
just in the grand history of
absolutely. I mean, Justin Martyr is the first apologetics, and he wrote 2 books on it, and they didn't work. He was still executed. But no, and absolutely, and like the whole purpose of it is, like as we talked about before, is it's a legal counsel, it's a legal defense, is what it's supposed to be. You know, you've joked around before about me being in the hot seat, and that's what apologetics is meant to be. Is like when I'm on trial, how do I defend myself? It's not meant to convince anyone else to be Catholic, and that I think is. I actually did get a chance to ask Gary that, like, because you had mentioned if people from the Catholic apologetics industrial machine would agree with my interpretation, even if it's not always done in practice. And at least Gary agreed that, yeah, no, it's supposed to be a personal defense, a personal, a personal response as to why the individual believes what they believe, not why someone else should believe what they believe.
Yeah. No, I like that, and I know I've said this. I probably sound like a broken record, but if more apologists were like you, James, I don't think I would have as many mean things to say about the apologetics industrial complex as I sometimes do. So yeah, I hope that this style of apologetics, I hope that your channel specifically, reaches far more people in the very near future than it already has, because I think that this kind of approach is sorely missed, I'll even say, in the apologetics landscape of today.
Yeah, I mean, if it's any consolation, there was someone had watched the live stream that I did. Ordinary Ruined Catholic is her YouTube channel, and you know, she shouted it out, and I checked her channel out, and she has a lot of the same frustrations you and I do with, you know, the traditional community. I had to laugh a little bit. One of the shorts that popped up when I was looking through her channel was, veiling is a traditional fetish.
Yeah.
Now, she was specifically calling out those who are, you know, doing it on social media for the clout and things like that. And I had to laugh because my mom was someone who veiled, but she was doing it because she struggled with pride. And then as soon as the veil became a source of pride for her, you know what she did? Threw it away.
Yeah.
Yep. But, you know, you're correct that I think, and in the Discord community that I'm in, me and the other moderators often discuss how frustrating it is.
Uh-oh, James, I've lost you again.
You know, and I know they don't. Yeah. So with a lot of the me and the moderators in another Discord community I'm in lament that there aren't a lot of Catholics, at least vocal Catholics, who are happy living the simple Catholic life, as in actually following the church. It's very ego driven. I did a video this past Monday after the whole co-redemptress title was no longer recommended by the church to be used as a title for Mary, and I just got so tired and frustrated with the outcry and everything else. And I'm like, people, the church isn't saying it's a bad title. The church isn't saying you have to stop using it. It's just saying, hey, when you have to explain a title and what it means 50 times, it might not be a good title.
Admittedly, it does sound like co-redemptrix, like co-captain is like equal parts captain with the, you know. So and, like, I think it's a bad title. Like,
yeah, and you know, and the thing is like, you're not alone in that. In the video, I mentioned that there were a lot of seminarians when we were studying and going over Mary, and that title came up. A lot of them were like, I don't know if I like that title. But
like, is the mother of the captain of the football team the co-captain of the football team? Like, no,
yeah.
she's not.
Well,
Like,
and what's
even
funny
though
is
she
like
gave birth to the
if
captain
you
of the
look at
football
the
team.
document, it goes through the history of that title. It started off as Mother of the Redeemer, and then just Redemptrix for shorthand. And then over time, as games of telephone do, meaning got lost.
That specific title is like a product of like the 18th century or something, isn't it? Like, it's like fairly recent.
Yeah. It's the co aspect of it specifically is fairly recent.
Yeah.
But it was always meant as a reference to Mary being the mother of the Redeemer.
Right.
But that's lost in translation.
Yes. Yeah.
So the church is just like, look, the fact that we've got to explain, like, Mother of God, whoever needs to explain that?
Nobody.
No one. So is that really a helpful title? And it also doesn't take away from her being, you can still call her Mother of the Redeemer.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I was so frustrated and done with people not responding in humility to the church that they promised that they would follow. So I just whipped out my laptop, didn't even get a script because it was in line with something else that I wanted to talk about. Couldn't figure out how to write a script, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to talk about this and vent for 30 minutes. But it goes back to that aspect that you were talking about of like, I think a lot of people want the fame and glory of being an apologist. Like, people wanted the fame and glory of speaking in tongues. But it requires a lot of hard work because you're trying to condense 2,000 years of knowledge into something that can be bite-sized, especially in this YouTube format. And then at the end of the day, you also have to be humble. And the fact that I saw multiple videos where people were denying the church, like, how is that a good example for your audience?
It's not. Yeah.
Well, Kevin, I think this was very very in tune with all of our other conversations where we come in with an idea and we just go on these side tangents.
That's what we do. I wouldn't have it any other way. I really wouldn't.
No, absolutely not. But I got an early day for work tomorrow. But unless you got any last minute comments for the audience.
The only note that I'll end on is just thanks for having me on, James. I really hope that if I can't hope that you become, the next Jimmy Aiken or whatever, I hope, I mean, I can hope that, and I do, but
yeah,
I also hope that all of the other apologists at least take a page from your book, because your approach is just so much more helpful. And I'll be jealous. I'll be selfish. Helpful to people like me.
Yeah.
And to bring it back to what the stream was all about. I think that you're pretty much the only apologist on Catholic YouTube who actually makes content geared towards people like me. So I hope that other people pay attention and learn a thing or two from you. That's my hope moving forward.
Thank you.
So thanks again for having me on.
I was thinking as a joke whether or not I should have started the stream as, all right, so Kevin, why are you frustrated with Catholic apologetics? What can they do better, and why is that exactly me?
Yeah. Well, hey, you didn't even have to make the joke because I got there on my own. So,
but thank you for coming on. I know we'll have more conversations in the future, and I'm always looking for content ideas and topics. So feel free to shoot me up and let me know on Discord anything that you feel like hasn't been explored.
Will do. Thanks again for having me on, James. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.